Hello, welcome to the Wire Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things sports. I'm Ryan McCrary, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing the first round of the college football playoff. The first round went down this past weekend, and we're going to talk about all four games: Alabama versus Oklahoma, Miami versus Texas A&M, Ole Miss versus Tulane, and lastly, Oregon versus James Madison. And after we get done talking about the first round matchups, we're going to look ahead to round two and talk about the games we have coming up this upcoming weekend. That's what we got on tap for today's episode. I hope you're excited. I know I am. And let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, let's get this episode started. It's Christmas time now. I am recording this on Christmas Eve. I'm recording this on Tuesday night. I've got a nice little Christmas sweater. I don't know if you can see it behind the mic. It says chilling with my snowmies with some snowmen at the bottom. I'm all festive right now, ready for Christmas. I hope y'all are having a Merry Christmas and enjoying the holidays. For this episode, we're going to be talking about the first round matchups in the college football playoff. There were four games this past weekend. We're going to talk about all of those games. And we're going to start off with Alabama versus Oklahoma. So this was the first game of the playoff. It was played on Friday. Alabama beat Oklahoma 34-24 on the road. These two teams actually already played earlier this season. Oklahoma beat Alabama that time, but Alabama, they're able to get the revenge, beating the Sooners by 10 on the road. Really big win for Alabama. I thought Oklahoma would win this game. I picked Oklahoma. I thought it was a coin toss. But I loved Oklahoma's defense. You know, a lot of analytical models were kind of leaning towards Oklahoma in this matchup. But Alabama pulled through in the end and was able to move on to the second round. The beginning of this game was absolutely wild because Oklahoma had a great start to the game. Oklahoma went up 17-0 in the second quarter, and they were dominating early in this game. I watched this whole game, and Oklahoma early on was playing like perfect football on both offense and defense. They were moving the ball really well and really easily on offense. John Mateer was making some big throws in the first half. They were really good on third downs in that first half. I feel like every third down, Oklahoma was converting. And then on defense, they were putting Alabama in a box in the first half. I mean, Alabama really couldn't do much for most of the first half. And so Oklahoma at one point was up 17-0 in the second quarter, and it was looking bad for Alabama. It was looking like it might be a long night for the Crimson Tide. But then, like everything that could go wrong for Oklahoma did go wrong. They had a punt where the punter like just dropped the ball inexplicably. I don't know how it happened, but he went to drop the ball to kick it, and just like, I don't know if he just didn't have a good handle on the ball, but he like didn't kick it and just dropped the ball. And he eventually got a kickoff, but he kicked the ball straight into the Alabama defender's chest, and Alabama got the ball with great field position. I believe Alabama was able to score on the ensuing drive. Then eventually Oklahoma has a pick six, a really bad pick six, where John Mateer and his receiver had some miscommunication. So that leads to points for Alabama. There was a deep bomb that Oklahoma had to a wide open receiver that the receiver dropped, and it would have been an easy touchdown for Oklahoma. It should have been an easy touchdown. So you had that. And eventually Alabama tied the game by halftime. It was crazy. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. Alabama looked awful early in the game. But then there were a ton of miscues for Oklahoma. And then early in the third quarter, Alabama was able to go up 27-17. Oklahoma did score a touchdown early in the fourth, but Alabama eventually responded with a touchdown of its own, and was able to win the game 34-24. Like I said earlier, Oklahoma looked amazing early in the game. But after that point, after like midway through the second quarter, Oklahoma looked like a different team. They just were not clicking on all cylinders like they were early in this game. They were able to score a touchdown in the fourth to make it a competitive game, but they had way too many miscues. They had a lot of missed field goals late in the game when they were trying to come back, and it was tough. They had a lot of missed opportunities in this game. Oklahoma honestly should have won. They should have won. I'm looking at the advanced numbers for this game. Oklahoma had a better success rate in this game than Alabama. Oklahoma had a success rate of 37%. Alabama had a success rate of just 31%. Both of those numbers are pretty bad, but Oklahoma had a better success rate. And if you're sitting at home wondering what success rate is, success rate is a metric that measures a team's consistency on a down-to-down basis. And the way it works is by measuring what percentage of plays that a team picks up, the amount of yards they need to pick up on each specific down. So if, let's say, a team has a first down, a 1st and 10, on that first down, for that play to be considered successful, they need to pick up, at minimum, 50% of the yardage needed to get that first down. Then for second down, they need to pick up 70% of the yardage needed to get a first down in order for that play to be considered successful. And for third and fourth downs, they need to pick up 100% of the yardage. That's how this metric works. And so Oklahoma, by this metric, was more consistent in this game than Alabama. And success rate matters because you can look at EPA per play, and EPA per play will tell you who's going to win a game. Like if a team has a better EPA per play than their opponent, they're going to win like basically every time. But EPA per play can be kind of skewed by explosive plays or turnovers, which obviously matter, but those plays, which can sometimes be fluky, aren't always the best predictor of future success. So a stat like success rate, which isn't influenced so much by turnovers and explosive plays, that's actually a better and more consistent indicator of future success. That's why the metric is useful to look at. I know that went off script a little bit there. I know that was a little bit off topic, but I thought, if we're going to look at these advanced stats, we need to know what they mean and why they matter. So I thought Oklahoma actually probably played a little bit better in this game than Alabama, especially in that first half, but Alabama took advantage of some missed opportunities by Oklahoma. And I thought both of the quarterbacks in this game played decently. John Mateer in that first half looked really good. He wasn't quite as good after that point. He had 5 sacks in this game, which is a lot. And his advanced numbers look a little bit shaky. Ty Simpson made some big plays, had some big throws in this game. He struggled early on, but I thought he got better as the game progressed. And I want to talk about Lazier Brooks for a second. I think it was him that had the big catch in the second half where he just reached over a defender and somehow made a crazy grab on a deep ball. Also, shout out to Deion Burks, the Oklahoma receiver. He had over 100 receiving yards in this game. He caught everything. He had 9 targets, caught 7 of them. His hands were insane in this game. He had so many big catches. I wanted to shout out those 2 players. Yeah, this was a fun game. Really enjoyable. Some crazy miscues from Oklahoma. A lot of missed field goals at the end. I know people were killing their kicker on social media. But very fun game. Big win for Alabama. Big win for their coach, Kalen DeMoore. There's been rumors that he might go to Michigan. I know he has tried to lay those to bed. But Alabama really needed this win. And now they move on to play Indiana. And we'll talk about that game later on in this episode. But let's go ahead and move on and talk about the other huge matchup we had in the first round, this being Miami versus Texas A&M. A really good matchup, a game I thought would be really competitive and a lot of fun to watch. It was competitive. Fun to watch? Maybe not, but it was a competitive game. Miami did win 10-3. This was a really interesting game. It was very low scoring, a defensive battle from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. But man, it was close, and it came down to the wire. And I thought by the end of the game, it was a pretty fun ending, and I really enjoyed this game. Thankfully, I was at a wedding while this game was happening, so I wasn't completely bored out of my mind by a lot of the punts and the turnovers, which we do want to talk about. So first off, in this game, in the first half, it was a punt fest. Punt after punt after punt after punt. It was insane. And there were a few missed field goals from both of these teams. If I remember correctly, there were a lot of... There was some crazy wind in this game that was affecting the field goal kicking. And aside from the punting, A&M had a fumble early. And then there was just a lot of punts. And then Miami had a missed field goal. They actually had 2 missed field goals in the first half, which is kind of crazy. Miami had 2 missed field goals there. I got sound playing in my headset. I'm trying to look at ESPN right here, and I got sound playing in my ears. But anyway, so Miami actually missed 2 field goals at the end of the first half. Then moving on in the third quarter, Miami started off the second half with a field goal going up 3-0. A&M threw an interception right after that. Miami had a chance to go up 6-0 with a field goal, but they missed again. Then we go back to trading punts. Then early in the fourth quarter, A&M kicks the field goal to make the score 3-3. Miami fumbles. A&M has a chance to take the lead, but they can't take advantage of the takeaway. A&M punts. Then Miami gets a late touchdown going up 10-3. A&M has a great final drive to try to tie the game up, but Marcel Reed throws a pick in the end zone, and Miami walks away with a 10-3 victory. Huge win from Miami. I picked the win here. I had Miami moving on in my bracket that I filled out. Big win from Miami. Huge win for the Hurricanes. It was shocking that Miami ended up making the playoff, especially after having 2 losses to unranked teams and being ranked behind Notre Dame prior, or in the penultimate, I think that's the right word, in the penultimate, I swear I'm not saying that word right, whatever, in the second to last CFP rankings, Miami was ranked behind Notre Dame, but in the final rankings, Miami jumps in, they barely sneak into the playoff, and now they win a playoff game. So shout out to the Hurricanes for that. They scrapped through a really crazy back and forth defensive battle where both quarterbacks struggled mightily. Both of these quarterbacks did not play well in this game. Carson Beck had less than 100 passing yards, and he also had 2 sacks. And Marcel Reed had 2 interceptions and 7 sacks. Lots of negative plays in this game from Marcel Reed. Now, Miami had some big-time performances, starting off with Mark Fletcher, their running back, who had 17 carries for 172 yards, 10.1 yards per carry. He had a huge run late in the game that set up Miami for a scoring drive on that touchdown in which they went up 10-3. And then Keontae Scott, their defensive back from Auburn, had 2 sacks and 3 tackles for loss. Shout out to those guys, Fletcher Jr. and Keontae Scott, for coming through in a big way in this game. And shout out to both of these teams' defenses. Both of these defenses balled out. Neither offense played well at all in this game. They both had, bottom 10 percentile EPA per plays in this game. Neither team was very good here in this contest. If you like defense, you would have loved this game. There were very few explosive plays. Both teams struggled in the red zone, and neither team was doing a great job. Or sorry, both defenses were doing a great job of limiting the other team's offense, especially when it comes to stopping the passing game. Both pass defenses were absolutely incredible in this game, and both teams were wreaking havoc on defense. There were 16 tackles for loss generated in this game, 9 from Miami and 7 from Texas A&M. For A&M, this is a tough loss. You scored just 3 points. Your quarterback struggles. If you're Mike Elko, this is a tough loss, a tough pill to swallow here. Your defense played extremely well. If you would have told Texas A&M that they were only going to give up 10 points in this game, they probably expect a win. But they don't. It's a struggle for the offense. And now Miami's moving on, and Texas A&M is going back home. But this was a great year for Texas A&M. I don't want that to be forgotten. This was a great year for the Aggies. They only had 1 loss all year long. They made it to the playoff, which was huge, and they hosted a playoff game. That's awesome. Now you just got to figure out how to take that next step. How do you elevate the program now? How do you take this team to the next level where you can win a playoff game and really make a strong push for a national championship? I think Texas A&M has a chance to do that at some point. Now the program's just got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what the next steps are. For Miami, you're moving on to take on Ohio State, and that's going to be a huge matchup. We'll talk about that later on, and I think that's actually a really interesting matchup. We'll see who I pick in that game, but I think Miami is better than people realize and may give Ohio State a better fight than people expect. We'll talk about that later on. Now we're going to talk about Tulane versus Ole Miss. Before I get into that game, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back in just a second. All right, I'm back. Let's go ahead and talk about Ole Miss versus Tulane real quick. So when I took a break, I got a ginger ale because I got ginger ale earlier this week. I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, been dealing with a bit of a cold, so I got some ginger ale. What a weird drink. Do we have any kind of ginger ale enjoyers listening to this pod? It's such an odd drink, like a ginger flavored, soda. It's such a weird concept. I kind of like it. I usually only drink ginger ale when I'm sick or when I'm dealing with a cold. But it's such a weird idea for a drink. I don't know. I know this is very random, but I just wanted to talk about that for a second. Let's go ahead and talk about Ole Miss versus Tulane. There were 2 Group of 5 schools that made it to the playoff this year. Tulane and James Madison. Ole Miss, they beat Tulane earlier this season. In that game, they won 45-10. This time, the Rebels win 41-10. And then this game was, I believe, a home game for Ole Miss. They're playing without their head coach, Lane Kiffin, who's now the coach at LSU. So they had an interim coach, or sorry, not an interim, because he's not their interim. He's their full-time head coach now, and I'm forgetting his name. So they're playing with a new coach in this game, and they honestly didn't miss a beat. They were dominant all game long. This is a very impressive performance from Ole Miss. They really handled business from the opening quarter to the final sound of the horn, and the Rebels' numbers in this game were really impressive. On offense, they didn't really miss a beat. They were had an EPA per play of 0.14, which is 72nd percentile, and they had a 51% success rate, which is in the 90th percentile. So the offense was very effective, and Trinidad Chambliss had a pretty nice game. He averaged 9.7 yards per pass attempt and had 0.24 EPA per play. And the Ole Miss run game was pretty productive with 4 total rushing touchdowns. So Ole Miss played really well in this game, like it did in its first matchup with Tulane this season. That's why they're able to win 31-10. And of course, the defense was pretty solid, only allowing 10 points. I will say, Tulane played a lot better than people realize. They had a success rate of 46%, which ranks in the 75th percentile. So it's not like Tulane wasn't able to move the football. They were. They just weren't able to finish drives. And if I remember correctly, I think Tulane may have had some turnovers in this game. Yes, they had 3 turnovers, which was killer. And like, those turnovers kill drives, and Tulane had 3 of them. So that really hurt them. And they were really, really effective throwing the ball. They averaged 0.35 EPA per dropback, which is a really strong number. And Jake Retzloff had 306 passing yards, averaged 8.7 yards per pass attempt, and had 1 passing touchdown. Unfortunately, they could not run the ball at all. They really couldn't run the ball. Their EPA per rush was negative 0.28, which is just 10th percentile. That's really bad. Really, really bad number there. So they couldn't really run the ball that much. And I'm wondering if they had a fumble. Yeah, they had 2 fumbles, 2 lost fumbles. It looks like that is probably what's dragging down that EPA per rush for Tulane. So that hurt them. Yeah, Ole Miss wins big. Not a surprise. I don't think anybody's really surprised by this result. Ole Miss was favored by 16.5. So I guess, winning by 31 is pretty impressive for the Rebels. They cover the spread with ease. And now Ole Miss moves on to the second round to play Georgia. That'll be a tough matchup. Yeah, big win for Ole Miss. And shout out to Tulane for making the playoff. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not Group of 5 teams should even be allowed to play in the playoff. But shout out to Tulane. They showed up. They lost badly, but they didn't play horribly. They actually played fairly well on offense, and I thought their passing attack was really effective in this game. They just played a really good opponent on the road. It's tough. They lost big, and so hey, you win some, you lose some. Big win for Ole Miss, moving on to the second round. Now they take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's go ahead and wrap up our matchup or our game reviews for this episode by talking about Oregon beating James Madison 51-34. This is another David versus Goliath matchup where people expected the big name Power 4 team to really dominate the Group of 5 school. I think this game was a lot closer than people were expecting. I will say Oregon dominated this game for most of the contest. Oregon took control of this game early, going up 34-3 in the second quarter. So Oregon was up 31 points early in the game. James Madison did fight back though. They fought back really hard in the second half, scoring 4 second-half touchdowns to make the final score a lot closer. And James Madison ended up covering the spread in this game. Now, I will say, Oregon looked amazing. Their offense killed it. They averaged 0.25 EPA per play, which ranks in the 88th percentile, and they had a success rate of 53%, which ranks in the 93rd percentile. And Dante Moore, the Oregon quarterback, was awesome in this game. He had 313 passing yards on 27 attempts. That's 11.6 yards per attempt. An amazing number there. And he had 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and a QBR of 99.1. He was awesome in this game. Shout out to Dante Moore. And the Ducks were unstoppable in the run game. They had 26 carries for 201 rushing yards. That's 7.7 yards per carry and 2 rushing touchdowns. I do want to give James Madison a lot of credit, though. Oregon was really great in this game, and their offense was electric. But James Madison put up a good fight, and they were really effective on offense with an EPA per play of 0.38, which ranks in the 95th percentile. They also had a success rate of 44%, which ranked in the 63rd percentile. And that success rate, not great, but still above average. And let me see, did JMU had a higher EPA per play than Oregon? They did. So the rare game where the loser in a game has more EPA per play than the winner, that's crazy, especially in a game like this where Oregon won by 17 points. That's crazy to see. I think that just shows you how well James Madison played in this game. And James Madison's run game was amazing in this game. Usually in a matchup like this, you expect the Power 4 team to really be on top of things when it comes to stopping the run. But JMU was able to run at will, averaging 0.68 EPA per rush, which is a 99th percentile mark there. And they had 186 rushing yards, 5.3 yards per attempt, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So James Madison was able to run the ball super consistently in this game. You'll love to see that. That's great. They weren't as effective throwing the ball, but they were really, really effective running the ball. And that's why the Dukes were able to score 34 points on Oregon, one of the better defensive teams in the entire nation. And James Madison put together a big fight, a great fight in the second half to make the game closer. But it just, the damage was already done. It was too little too late by that point. And so Oregon wins this game 51-34 at home. And now Oregon will take on Texas Tech in round 2. That's going to be a huge matchup. I'm super excited to see that game. That's going to be a lot of fun. And now that we've talked about all of the first round matchups, we're going to talk a little bit about what we should or what we can expect from the second round matchups. I'm not going to do a deep dive into all of those games. I want to do a quick little preview into the 4 second round matchups we have coming up this weekend. Before I get into that, I'm going to take another break, and I'll be right back in just a second. Okay, let's wrap up this episode of the podcast by doing a little bit of a mini preview for the second round of the college football playoff. So we got some games coming up this week. This is when we start getting into some of the bigger matchups that we're going to see in the college football playoff. The first game we're going to have is on December 31st between Miami and Ohio State. This is going to be a really, really fun matchup. I do expect Ohio State to win this game, by a fairly decent margin. I'm looking at some projections on CFBgraphs.com. They have Ohio State winning this game by just under 8 points. So they're expecting Ohio State to win by a touchdown, which I think is fair. But I would not be shocked if this game is a little bit closer than people expect. Because, and the reason why I say this is because Miami's defense is just so good, and their advanced numbers on both sides of the ball are really impressive. This is a really strong team in Miami. I was really critical of Miami for losing to 2 unranked teams, and I didn't think the Hurricanes should have been in the playoff. However, I never discounted how good they were as a team. In terms of just pure team strength, this is one of the better teams in the nation. And because of that, I think they can give Ohio State a better game than people expect. However, I'm also a huge Buckeyes truther. Ohio State should win this game. I think they will win this game. And I would not be surprised if they win this game by a significant margin. I just want to say, there is a world where this is a pretty close game in the fourth quarter. And if that happens, I won't be shocked. I won't be shocked. Now, that doesn't take away from my belief in Ohio State. They're my national championship pick. I think they're the best team in the nation, and I have them going all the way. I just have a lot of respect for Miami, and their analytical profile is just really, really strong. Next up, we've got 3 games on January 1st. That's going to be New Year's Day. We've got Texas Tech and Oregon. This is going to be a really fun matchup. I'm super excited for that. CFBgraphs.com has Texas Tech winning this game 26-21. So winning by about 5 points here. And I picked Texas Tech to win this game. I think that'll happen. But this is going to be a really close game. It's a really fun matchup. We've got 2 really strong defenses here. And so we may see a low-scoring game here, or maybe a lower-scoring game. But I think that's going to be a fun matchup. If Oregon wants to win, I think their offense and Dante Moore need to be clicking on all cylinders. And so if they can do that, they can win this game. But it's going to be tough because Texas Tech's defense is out of this world good. It's really good. But Oregon is good enough on both sides of the ball to win this game. I wouldn't be shocked either way if either of these teams win. But I will pick Texas Tech, but I do really like, how good Oregon is all around, and how clean they are on both sides of the ball. Next up, we've got Indiana versus Alabama. Big matchup here. A lot of people I say this. I think a lot of people who don't have a ton of knowledge about college football, who are more casual fans, probably think Alabama is either going to be Indiana or Indiana or has a good shot at beating Indiana. I'm gonna be a hater here. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. Indiana is, I'm gonna be blunt here. Is giving Alabama that belt in this game. Indiana's whooping Alabama, in my opinion. I'm very confident Indiana's beating Alabama. I would put a lot of money on Indiana winning this game. They are arguably the best team in the nation. They're up there with Ohio State. They are just as good as Ohio State. Just as good. And that is very high praise. I would not say that if I didn't truly believe it. But I do believe that. Indiana is one of the best offensive and defensive teams in the nation. This is one of the better teams we've seen in recent memory. They are phenomenal. And Alabama just isn't that. I mean, this is one of the weaker Alabama teams in recent memory. Indiana should dominate this game. CFBgraphs.com has Indiana favored by about 9 points in this game, winning 29-20. And I agree with that spread. I mean, Indiana should win this game by double digits. They are way better than Alabama. And Alabama is a solid team, but Indiana is a national championship contender and arguably the best team in the country. This should not be close. If it's close, I'll be shocked, floored. Indiana should wipe the floor with Alabama. And when I say that, I just mean they should control the game. And even if the game is within 2 touchdowns, it should feel like Indiana has full control of the contest throughout the game. So I'm expecting Indiana to win this game handily. And then lastly, we've got Ole Miss versus Georgia. We saw this game earlier this year, and it was a shootout. We'll see if this time around, if the game plays out any differently, if we see some more defense from these two teams, or if it's another, high-scoring affair. I think Georgia should win this game, though I think it might be a close matchup, kind of like it was the first time. CFBgraphs.com has Georgia winning 28-25, winning by about 3 points. I think that's a fair spread. Georgia's playing really well right now. Their offense is playing at a high level. The defense has looked better recently. And when Georgia's playing at a high level on defense, they're hard to beat. If Georgia's defense plays well in this game, they can win big. And this could be a really impressive performance from the Bulldogs. I really don't see Ole Miss winning this game. If they pull off the upset, I'd be pretty surprised. I just don't have a lot of faith in Ole Miss's defense. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Georgia. And I do think there's a world where Georgia's defense plays really well and is able to stifle the Ole Miss offense a bit and win this game by 7 or more points. But I'm rolling with Georgia here. I think Georgia should win. And those are my thoughts on the second round matchups that we'll see in the college football playoff. That's it for today's episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a like or subscribe or do both. That would help me out a lot. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, please leave a review. That would help me out a lot as well. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I know I did, and I'll see y'all next time. God bless and Merry Christmas.